May 13, 1862, Charleston Harbor. In the dead of night, an enslaved man has just taken control of a Confederate warship. He is about to make a run for freedom. The air is thick with salt and smoke, and the only sounds are the thrum of the engine and the pounding of his own heart. He needs to sail the warship straight past 5 armed forts. His wife and children are hiding below deck. One wrong signal, one missed salute, and they will be executed before the sun rises. He is wearing the captain's uniform. He is standing where he is not allowed to stand. He is about to do something no one in Charleston believes is possible, something that will either lead them to freedom or to a watery grave. This is Monochrome Documentaries. We bring history's overlooked heroes to center stage. The Civil War split the nation open. For nearly 4 million enslaved people, it wasn't just war. It was the first fracture in a system that had never bent. Charleston was the Confederacy's fortress. Cannons along the harbor walls, mines beneath the tide. Fort Sumter rising from the water like a warning. It was built to keep the Union out, but on those same docks worked a man who was studying it from the inside. He didn't just see walls and chains. He saw patterns and leverage. Robert Smalls was born into slavery in 1839 in Beaufort, South Carolina. His mother made sure he understood exactly what that meant. She showed him the fields. She showed him the scars. She showed him the price of obedience. It did not break him. It made him patient. At 12, he was sent to Charleston and hired out. Every dollar he earned went to someone else. He was allowed to keep one. He drifted toward the harbor. He worked the docks as a lamplighter, a rigger, and a wheelman. The Confederacy would never call him a pilot, but he knew that harbor better than most men who wore the title. He memorized the currents, the shifting sandbars, the whistle signals, and the hidden gun ranges. He memorized it all. He married Hannah. They had children. And suddenly, patience was no longer enough. Freedom cost $800. After years of saving, he had $100. Then the first shots of the Civil War echoed across Charleston Harbor. And for the first time in his life, the system that caged him was distracted. The impossible no longer looked impossible. It looked vulnerable. And Robert Smalls began to plan. In the fall of 1861, Robert Smalls was assigned to the Planter, a 147-foot Confederate warship, armed, necessary, visible. It moved troops, it planted mines, it carried guns past every defense in Charleston Harbor, and Smalls was at the wheel. Every day the Planter steamed past the forts. Fort Moultrie, Fort Johnson, Castle Pinckney, batteries lining the shore, and Fort Sumter, the ultimate sentry. Every day he saw the Union blockade on the horizon. 7 miles between slavery and freedom. On deck, he was obedient, reliable, trusted. Below the surface, he was studying everything. The captain's posture, the way he leaned on the rail, the timing of the whistles, the exact sequence of signals that meant friend, not target. Every trip past those guns was a rehearsal for the night he'd finally make his move. Every pass beneath those guns was practice. He told only 7 men. If one of them spoke, they would hang. Then the officers made a mistake. They got comfortable. They began spending nights ashore, leaving the enslaved crew alone with a Confederate warship. That was the crack. On May 12, 1862, the Planter took on heavy artillery and ammunition. It was a floating arsenal. That night, the captain stepped off the ship. The harbor fell silent. The officers were gone. The guns were loaded. The boilers were cold. And for the first time in his life, Robert Smalls stood alone on the deck of a Confederate warship. Between him and freedom, 5 forts, 7 miles of open water, hundreds of cannons, and no second chance. 2 a.m. Smalls told his crew and family the moment had come. They moved like thieves, with quiet feet and hushed orders. 16 souls, 8 men, 5 women, 3 children, close enough to touch, but hidden below deck. 3 a.m., Smalls walked into the captain's cabin. He put on the coat. He put on the wide-brimmed straw hat. In the dark, silhouette is everything. He practiced the stance, arms crossed, head low. If he stood right, the sentries wouldn't see a fugitive. They'd see Captain Relia. He ordered the boilers fired. Wood hit the firebox. Valves opened. Pressure gauges climbed. The planter began to vibrate. Not a shudder, but a hum. He ran the flags up. Confederate, South Carolina. The exact parade of colors the Harbor Watch expected. Smalls took the wheel, cold iron under his palms. He didn't just steer, he performed. From the wharf, a sentry lit his lantern. Smalls felt the ship's pulse under his feet. His hand found the whistle cord. He had rehearsed this 100 times, but rehearsals aren't the same as cannon fire. The sentries were listening for the secret code. Get it wrong, and the batteries opened fire. Smalls sealed his jaw, steadied his hand, and pulled the first whistle, and the sound cut through the night. The harbor went dead silent. The silence lasted an eternity. From the wharf, the sentry leaned forward. A long second. 2. Then the lantern dipped, all clear. The planter slid past the first checkpoint. No shouts, no gunfire, just dark water ahead. But the harbor was not finished with them. The channel narrowed. The forts loomed larger. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, heavier guns were waiting. Below deck, 16 people sat in silence, listening for the sound that would end everything. Smalls did not look back. He steered straight toward the next set of cannons. The planter pushed deeper into the harbor, engine turning, paddle wheels biting, smoke trailing low against the dark. One fort fell behind them, then another. At each checkpoint, Smalls pulled the whistle in the exact sequence the sentries expected. 2 long blasts to indicate he was a friend. The language of the harbor. He waited. No alarm, and they moved on. Battery after battery slid past in the dark like teeth, 300 yards to the wall. But one set of guns still waited. Ahead, rising out of the black water, was Fort Sumter. Fort Sumter wasn't just a shadow anymore, it was right there. Close enough to see movement along the walls. Close enough that he could hear boots on stone when the wind shifted. Men below deck whispered for him to steer wide, to give the fort space. Smalls did not move the wheel. To veer away was to confess. To hesitate was to invite inspection. Inspection meant chains. He held the exact line he had sailed 100 times before. Straight, ordinary, predictable. The planter drifted into the shadow of Fort Sumter. Above him, cannon barrels angled toward the channel, and on the ramparts, a figure stepped forward. The sentry on the rampart raised a lantern, a hard, accusing light, a code. Smalls answered with the hand signs he'd copied 1,000 times. Silhouette, hat low, chin down, the captain's pose. The night thinned to a single, living second. Gunpowder smelled sharp on the air. Boots scraped stone above them. Every breath on the planter tasted like metal. He expected the world to end in flame. Then, an eternity of silence later, the signal came, all clear. Smalls did not breathe. He pulled the whistle once, the exact salute the forts required. The noise cut the dark. The planter slid past the last Confederate guns and into open water. But open water meant visibility. Dawn began to lift the horizon. And with the light came a new line of guns. On the edge of the sea, dark shapes, the Union blockade. From a distance, they would see only one thing, a Confederate warship coming straight at them. No white flag, no signal of surrender. They'd assume it was an attack. The crew inside the Planter frantically searched for a white flag, but they had none. On the nearest deck, a cannon crew moved into position. The barrel swung. Orders were shouted across the water. Smalls could see the men clearly now. They were seconds from firing. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He executed the final phase of the plan. The sheet! Hands grabbed the white linen he had prepared. Confederate colors were yanked down. The sheet shot upward, snapping in the rising wind. For one terrible second, it tangled against the halyard. The Union gunner leaned into his sight. Finger tightening. Hold! The sun broke the horizon. Light struck the white fabric. A shout from the Union deck. I see white! The command to fire died in someone's throat. The cannon did not speak. The Planter drifted forward, smoke thinning in the morning light. A small boat pushed off from the Union ship. Officers climbed aboard, expecting a defecting captain. Instead, they found a slave wearing a captain's hat. Smalls stepped forward. He removed the straw brim. He looked the Union officer in the eye, not as property, but as a pilot. And in the quiet that followed two near executions, he delivered the line that would become legend. Good morning, sir. I've brought you some of the old United States guns, sir. The Union officers boarded in disbelief. The stolen ship was intact. The guns were real, the ammunition stacked. But inside the captain's cabin was something even more dangerous. Signal books, Confederate codes, detailed maps of mines buried beneath Charleston Harbor. Admiral Samuel Francis DuPont stared at the young man who had delivered it all. He wrote to Washington immediately, "This man is superior to any who have come into our lines." The North erupted. Newspapers called it one of the most heroic acts of the war. Congress awarded prize money. Smalls received $1,500, a fortune for a man who legally owned nothing yesterday. The South responded with fury. A $4,000 bounty was placed on his head. But the real shockwave wasn't the money. It wasn't the headlines. It was the intelligence. Because of Smalls, the Union knew exactly where the mines were. Because of Smalls, the blockade tightened. He hadn't just escaped slavery. He had crippled the Confederate defense of Charleston without firing a single shot. In August 1862, Robert Smalls didn't just walk into Washington. He marched in with a stolen warship on his resume. He stood before President Lincoln and Secretary of War Stanton. He didn't ask for pity. He argued that black men were ready to fight, and he was the living proof. Weeks later, the order was signed. The first black regiments began to form. The Planter became the USS Planter, and Smalls didn't just advise, he commanded. In 1863, he became the first black captain of a United States vessel. After the war, he returned to Charleston Harbor. He watched the American flag rise again over Fort Sumter, the same fort he had slipped beneath in the dark. Then, the final victory. He went home to Beaufort. He bought the house where he had been born enslaved. He lived there not as property, but as a congressman. 5 terms, fighting for schools, infrastructure, and civil rights. He died in 1915, a master of his own destiny. He went from being owned as property to commanding the very ships that once caged him. He died a congressman, in the same house where he was born a slave. He once said his race needed no special defense, only an equal chance in the battle of life. On a dark night in Charleston Harbor, wearing a captain's hat he had no legal right to touch, Robert Smalls didn't wait for that chance. He took it. Robert Smalls escaped slavery by steering straight into danger. Years later, Captain Lindemann would face a 120-foot tsunami and make one impossible decision that would decide the fate of 150 people. That story is here. Thanks for watching.